Hello, I'm Allison Larkin Powell, a member and former co-chair of the PEN Translation Committee. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the third and final event in this series of bilingual readings brought to you by the PEN Translation Committee as we celebrate Women in Translation Month. The first two events were hosted by the Jill Translation Reading Series, and recordings can be found on Jill's Facebook site, each with over 1,000 views already. We're grateful to PEN America for hosting today's event, and also grateful to the three co-organizers of this month's events, Nancy Naomi Carlson, Anna Dinwoody, and Sandra Smith, as well as to Larissa Kaiser and Lisbeth Redfield of Jill for their generous support. And many thanks to our panelists today and to all of you for watching. Women in Translation Month is an initiative that was started in 2014 by the blogger Maytal Radzinski to address gender disparity in the field of translation. Women in Translation Month aims to highlight women and non-binary writers and translators whose recognition and representation in literary publishing is essential to freedom of expression. The past few months have been devastating across the world, from the COVID-19 pandemic to ongoing police violence and mass protests. Forces of nationalism, greed, and bigotry are at work trying to divide us and to make us distrust one another. Reading translations in this context is more important than ever, because translation allows us to connect across language barriers and to consider perspectives we might not otherwise have access to. A virtual platform allows us to reach more people than ever. And now I'm happy to introduce the moderator of today's event, Nancy Naomi Carlson. Nancy is twice an NEA grant recipient and the author of 10 books, including 6 translations. Her translation of Mauritian writer Karl Tochabuli's Cargo Hold of Stars, Kulathunga, is forthcoming from Segal Books in January 2021. Her most recent book of poetry, An Infusion of Violets, also published by Segal, was called New and Noteworthy by the New York Times.
Thank you, Allison, for that lovely introduction, and I echo all of your thanks. I'm so happy to be moderating this one-of-a-kind event where we're presenting 5 translators and authors live from all over the world, including Hungary, Italy, Russia, Sri Lanka, Luxembourg, and Georgia, the country. The reading will be followed by a short Q&A session, time permitting, and if you would please hold your questions until after all the readings so that we can see them in the chat box. Our first pair of readers will be translator Agnes Marton and author Zita Izso. Agnes Marton is a Hungarian-born poet, writer, librettist, fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in the UK, and reviews editor at the OFI Press. Recent publications include her collection Captain Fly's Bucket List and 4 chapbooks with Moriah Books in the USA. She won the National Poetry Day competition in the UK. Zita Izso is a Hungarian poet and editor and the recipient of numerous awards and grants. She published her 3rd poetry collection in 2018, whose title in English is Nighttime Landing. Welcome, Agnes and Zita.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. We are honored to be involved in this wonderful event. We are reading 2 poems, a long one and a short one. First in Hungarian, then in English. Most of Zita's poems deal with trauma and the possibility of forgiveness. The first poem is called Like Mouse Brooders. Zita.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It's so good to be here with you. I will read the first poem. Ivadékaikat a bölcsőszájú halak. Az egészből leginkább a hóra emlékszem. Könyököltünk a párkányon, és a végtelen fehérséget néztük. amikor ránk törték az ajtót a katonák. Arra még volt időm, hogy berángassam a húgomat a kamrába. Mi alatt ott rejtőztünk. Minden lélegzetvétel úgy fájt, mint a puskák szuronyaival döfködnének. És attól féltem, a szurkálások helyén be lehet majd nyúlni a bordáim közé. Aztán mindennek vége lett. Megtalálnak minket, a húgom sikítani kezd. Én összeszorítom a szemem, hogy ne lássam, mit tesznek vele. Azt mondják, a legnagyobb szükségben halljuk meg az Isten szavát. De talán azért nem tudsz beszélni, mert nem a tenyereden, hanem a szádban hordasz minket, Uram, mint ivadékaikat a bölcsőszájú halak. Kirángatnak a kertbe, szétvezítik a lábamat, hóval tömik be a szám, mert zavarja őket ez a furcsa, elnyújtott, magas sikítás, amiről én sem tudtam mindjárt, hogy belőlem jön. Azt hittem, megint beragadt egy oltalmat kereső rákcsáló, a szigetelés és a tető közé, és annyiszor fut neki a faburkolatnak, míg véresre nem veri a fejét, és ott nem marad. De amikor betömték a számat hóval, rájöttem, hogy belőlem jött az a hang. A hó szépen lassan olvad a számban, a leve lassan csurog le a torkomon. Pont olyan íze van, mint amikor a húgommal a hóesésben kinyújtottuk a nyelvünket. Pedig mióta elkezdődött a háború, semminek sincs ugyanolyan íze. Sem anyám levesének, sem a dédi sült almájának, sem a nagyanyám piskótájának. De a hó íze semmit sem változott. Anyám azt mondta, az Isten nem a szájában, hanem a tenyerén hord minket. Fekszem a hideg földön, és a te tenyered melegére gondolok, Uram. Miután végeznek, felállnak, de nem szólnak semmit. Mindegyik néma marad. A hegyek úgy fúródnak az égbe, mint ordítást elfojtó ember ajkaiba a fogak. Thank you.
Like mouse brooders. What I remember best is the snow. We were elbowing on the ledge, watching the never-ending white when the soldiers sprang the door. I barely had time to drag my little sister to the pantry. While hiding there, every breath hurt as if I were prodded with bayonets. I was scared it would become possible to reach into the gaps of my ribs at the jabbing spots. Then it finished, all of it. We are found. My sister starts screaming. I close my eyes so I can't see what happens to her. We are set to hear God's voice when we need it most. But you might not be able to talk, Lord, because you carry us not on your palm, but in your gob. like mouse brooders. I'm tumbled into the garden and my legs are strained apart. They cram snow amongst my lips. They can't stand my odd elongated squeal. I don't recognize it right then as mine. I think it's a helpless rodent stuck between the seal and the roof that locks himself into the wooden overlay as many times as it takes to smash his head and die. When they stuff snow in my mouth, I realize it's my voice from inside. The snow is melting in my mouth, nice and slow. It melts sullenly in my throat. It tastes exactly like when my sister and I shut out our tongues during snowfall. Though since the war started, nothing tastes the same. Mother's soup, Nana's baked apples, Nana's sponge cake. But the taste of snow stays the same. Mom said God is not carrying us in his mouth, but on his palm. I'm lying on the ground. It's cold. Lord, I'm thinking of the warmth of your palm. When they finish, they stand up, mute, not a word. The mountains are piercing the sky like the teeth of someone, dampening a hole. And the second poem is called New Hope.
Az új remény. Tulajdonképp boldogok voltak, mert megengedték nekik, hogy 3 napra hazavigyék magukhoz a testet. Sétálni és játszótérre is menjenek. Családi fotókat készítsenek vele. Jó érzés volt látni az otthonukban. Lefektetni a neki berendezett szobában. Beszélni hozzá a babakocsinál. Persze tudták, hogy majd vissza kell adniuk. Csak ebben a 3 napban lehetett az övék. Mégis jó volt, mert a közös múlt kitágult, mint az anyaméh. Thank you.
New Hope. We can say they were happy. His body was allowed to be taken home for 3 days. They could go for a walk and to the playground, take family photos with him. It felt great to see him at theirs, to tuck him in the room meant to be his, to talk to him over the pram. They surely knew they would have to give him back. He could belong to them only for these 3 days. It was nice though. Their past with him dilated like the space before birth. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes and Zita. Our next pair of readers will be translator Olivia Sears and author Mariangela Gualtieri. Translator Olivia E. Sears is founder of the Center for the Art of Translation and serves on the editorial board of Two Lines Press. Her translations of Mariangela Gualtieri have appeared in the Arkansas International and are forthcoming in Copper Nickel and The Common. Mariangela Gualtieri has published over a dozen collections of poetry and plays. As a dramaturg of the famed Teatro Valdoca, co-founded with Cesare Ronconi, she often bridges the two realms, cultivating the oral dimension of poetry and its communal collective roots. These poems originally appeared in her best-selling volume, Bestia di Gioia. Welcome, Olivia and Mariangela.
Thank you so much to the Penn Translation Committee and to all the organizers for putting together this really tremendous collection of readers and the whole series that's gone on this month. We're going to read 3 untitled poems today from Beast of Joy. And although poems were published in Italy in 2010, they have tremendous relevance throughout the world today, and especially in the United States in 2020. We're going to read the poems in alternation, so Mariangela will read the Italian first, and then I'll read the English.
Per tutte le costole bastonate e rotte, per ogni animale sbalzato dal suo nido e infranto nel suo meccanismo d'amore, per tutte le seti che non furono saziate fino alle labbra spaccate, alla caduta, all'abbaglio, per i miei fratelli nelle tane, per le mie sorelle nelle reti, nelle tele e nelle sprigionate fiamme, nelle capanne, per le bambine mie strappate e per le perle nel fondale marino, per l'inverno che mi piace e l'urlo della ragazza, quel suo tentare la fuga invano. Per tutto questo conoscere e amare, eccomi. Per tutto penetrare e accogliere, eccomi. Per ondeggiare con tutto e forse cadere, eccomi, che ognuno dei semi inghiottiti si farà in me fiore fino al meccanismo del frutto, che qualunque dolore verrà puntualmente cantato, e poi anche quella leggerezza di certe mani, di certe ore delicate. Tutto sarà guardato mirabilmente, ascoltata ogni onda di suono, penetrata nelle sue venature ogni canto, ogni pianto. Lo giuro adesso che tutto è impregnato di spazio siderale. Anche in questa brutta città appare chiaro, sopra i rumorosissimi bar, lo spettro luminoso della gioia. Questo lo giuro.
For all the ribs battered and broken, for every animal hurled from its nest, its mechanism for love shattered, for all the thirst left unquenched, until lips crack, until collapse, until the blazing failure, for my brothers in their dens, and my sisters in their webs and in traps and amid the flames erupting, and in their huts and bound and abused, for the children torn from me and the pearls in the seabed, for the winter I adore and for the girl's scream, her vain attempt to flee. For this, knowing and loving all this, I am here. To fathom and embrace all this, I am here. To float along with everything, perhaps to fall, I am here, so that every swallowed seed will flower in me until the fruit astonishes. I swear it. So that all suffering will be duly sung. And then also the lightness of certain hours, of certain delicate hands, all will be viewed with wonder. Every wave of sound heard, every song, every sob will penetrate the veins. I swear now everything is suffused with sidereal space. Even in this ugly city, the glowing specter of joy shines bright above the noisiest taverns. This I swear.
La capra sul fondo di me non vuole dormire. Cammina per i miei greppi, solleva quel buio e ne scopre ancora più fondo. Al centro di me una bestiola accucciata si sveglia e respira il silenzio che nel giorno è mancato. Respira, a suo modo canta. Resta attonita dentro, cucita nel fasciame del sangue, rivestita del buio notturno, palpitante dei boschi, sanguinante, infante. La parte più viva sta sveglia e pilota. Solleva il corpo dal letto, lo accuccia nella camera accanto e canta dentro una felicità sconosciuta, un canto d'eternità, spaventoso e immenso. È ignota la sua volontà. Da che strana vita si erge quel suo stare sveglia, da che lontananza si accende. Non è bestia nera, ma piccola bestia di luce che sta nella vita un po' stretta per lei.
The goat deep inside me doesn't want to sleep. She walks my barren bluffs, lifts that darkness, and discovers still more there, deeper. At the center of me, a small curled up beast awakens and breathes the silence that by day was missing. Breathes, in her own way, sings. She's left stunned inside, stitched into my blood's cladding, clothed in the throbbing darkness of nighttime forests. Bleeding, infant. The part most alive stays awake and drives. She lifts the body from the bed, curls it up on the floor in the next room, and sings. Inside, an unfamiliar happiness, a song of eternity, terrifying and immense. Her will is unknown. What strange life gives rise to this staying awake? From what distance is it ignited? She is not a dark beast, but a small beast of light who inhabits a life that for her is a bit too confined.
Hanno detto che è stata una cometa che impattando col duro della terra ha portato l'acqua fra le pietre del nostro pianeta. Una cometa, hanno detto, un ghiaccio volante di luce come scagliato da altre stelle fin qui. E dentro c'era la legge della specie, la formula del sangue, delle linfe, il timbro di ogni voce. L'acqua è la perfetta chiave che apre le forme scatenate. L'acqua che ancora beviamo è stata strascico di luce viaggiante, bastimento abbagliante nel buio fra mondi.
I'd like to dedicate this final translation to Susanna Cecchi, whose dazzling light remains among us. They said it was a comet striking the Earth's crust that brought water among the rocks of our planet. A comet, they said, ice of light hurtling down as if flung here from other stars. And inside was the law of the species, the formula of blood and sap, the timbre of every voice. Water is the perfect key to release the unbridled forms. The water we still drink is the legacy of traveling light, dazzling vessel in the darkness between worlds. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia and Mariangela. Our next pair of readers will be translator Rachael Daum and author Natalia Rubanova. Rachael Daum translates from Serbian, Russian, and German. She received her MA from Indiana University and her BA from the University of Rochester. She completed certificates in literary translation studies at both institutions. She lives in Cologne, Germany, as is the American Literary Translators Association's Communication and Awards Manager. Natalia Rubanova lives in Moscow, Russia. She originally studied piano and received her bachelor's from Moscow Pedagogical State University. She has published 4 books, and her plays have been performed in Russia and most recently in London at the Solo International Festival, where she was awarded the prize for Best New Writing. Welcome, Rachael and Natalia.
Hello, thank you so much. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Nancy and Sandra for organizing this reading, and to Nancy and to Allison for hosting. It's a really great honor to be here and sharing my Natalia's work in such awe-inspiring company. Thank you. I just want to provide a little context, since Natalia and I will be reading from the middle of the play. This is a 1-act thingamajig, which is still in progress, and for the moment is titled Awesome. The Russian title is Zashibis, which has been a great challenge to translate. It's a one-man show featuring a nameless narrator typing letters to a robot called Werther, which is a clear reference to Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. The man is recounting the women who have broken his heart, and I want to give a slight warning that it reads like a bit like a manifesto. There is offensive and potentially troubling language, but we do get to witness the narrator destroy himself throughout the course of the 1-act, spoiler, so he doesn't get away with it, which is nice. Natalia is going to read letters 4 and 5, and I will read 4 through 7. Natalia, прочитайте, пожалуйста. Oh, Natalia, выключите звук, пожалуйста.
Меня слышно? Hello. Hello from Moscow. Thank you for your invitation, Pan America, and Nancy Naomi Carlson. Thank you for invitation. I hope our cooperation will be continue. And my play is very relevant these days. The story is very indicative of modern people in Russia, Europe, and America, I think. Thanks for the talented and beautiful, beautiful translation, Rachael Daum. Reading? Или я? Сначала я, Рэйчел?
Да, да.
Окей, sorry.
Прочитайте.
One minute, окей. Отрывок из монодрамы «Зашибись». 4-е письмо роботу Вертеру. Проклятия повреждают генетический аппарат, обрекая существо на гибель. Я же тщетно пытаюсь понять процесс перехода от живой материи к костной и обратно. Разделение духовной субстанции и ее материального носителя называют смертью. Вертер, Вертер, если бы ты знал, о чем я мечтаю и что вижу во сне, спроси как-нибудь, спроси. Я с головой ушел в работу, а куда еще? Не обладая хоть сколько-нибудь высокими талантами, я делал сайты. За это недурно платили, как минимум пару раз в год я улетал куда-нибудь подальше. Компании не требовалось, а довольно сносный английский снимал много вопросов. Не могу сказать, какую именно страну я любил больше. Нет, не могу. Каждая по-своему прекрасна. Но вот Куба, да, пожалуй, Куба. Ни Мексика, ни Америка, ни даже Перу. Нет, нет, Куба, Куба Либра, мать ее. Совершенно гениальное место, кто бы там что ни говорил. Роман с мулатой Чина, сладкой мулаткой, не в счет. Прилетев, сдал анализы, пронесло. Я приходил в себя, перечитывал Эко, заново открывал Бессе, листал Буковски, Миллера. Я слушал музыку, Китаро, Коронеш, Гарбарикова, Клавика. Я пересмотрел, наверное, всего Хичкока, хотя никогда не был увлечен им особенно сильно. Однако именно в фильмах Хичкока таилось противоядие. В нем, как ни странно, не было боли. Я не хотел, вовсе не хотел больше того, что называют, ха-ха, серьезными отношениями. Я не верил в них, просто больше не верил. И тут как на грех, понимаешь, Вертер, как на грех на сцену выходит Мара. 5-е письмо роботу Вертеру. Ты спрашиваешь, о чем я мечтаю? Отвечаю. Мне бы хотелось функционировать, как функционирует безграничное поле сознания. Да-да, это правда. Можно ли желать большего? Напряжение, возникающее между болью и удовольствием, есть творчество. Смерть, как отточие жизни, есть творчество. Это так же верно, как и то, что вне пределов земной атмосферы небо всегда черное, закрытое на щеколду слов вечность, мертвого, григорианского, хорала.
Specific Natalia. The 4th letter to Robot Werther. Curses cripple the genetic apparatus, dooming the being to death. I'm trying in vain to grasp the process of progress from matter living to inert and back. The separation of spiritual substance from its material medium is called death. Werther, Werther, if only you knew what I dream of and what I see in my sleep. Ask me sometime, ask me. I plunged headfirst into work. What else? Not possessing any higher talents, I made websites. The pay isn't half bad. At least a few times a year I flew somewhere far away. I didn't need to use a company to book, and passing English took care of most questions. I can't say which one country I liked best. No, they all have their own, you know, so on and so on. But Cuba, yes, probably Cuba. Not Mexico, not America, not even Peru. No, no, Cuba, Cuba Libre, hot damn. A perfect place no matter what they say. Do flings with locals count? I got tested when I came back, all clean. I came to my senses. I read Echo, opened up Hesse again, leafed through Bukowski and Miller with a beer in hand. I collected records, Kitaro and Karunesh, Garbarik and Vaklavik. For some contrast, probably, I rewatched all of Hitchcock, though I'd never been particularly drawn to his work. But in it, an antidote lurked. In it, strange, there was no pain. I didn't want any more of that, what we call serious relationships. I didn't believe in them, not anymore. And then there, like a sin, do you understand, Werther, like a sin, Mara enters the scene. 5th letter to Robot Werther. You ask what I dream about. I'll tell you. I wanted to function like a limitless field of consciousness functions. Yes, yes, that's right. Can you want anything more? Tension arising between pain and pleasure, there is creation. Death, like an outpouring of life, there is creation. It is as true as what lies outside the bounds of the Earth's atmosphere. The sky is always black. Infinity closed on the latch of words, cantus firmus of the Gregorian chant. Anyway, Mara, maybe I'll even try to describe her. 5'6", a brunette with a classic bob, nary a flea nor flaw, those huge eyes so easy to drown in. They changed color with her mood, but usually they seem dark blue. No false lenses, that was their real color. She had clear, matte skin. I don't know if this virtue was from any special treatment, I don't know. Slender, but not skinny fingers, just right. The manicure always pristine. The nails, it's true, were, it seemed to me, a little too long to be able to hold her hand. They're fine for using a mouse and keyboard, she laughed, scraping my heart. I can't love not the ones anymore, and they're not the ones, always not the ones. Mara also turned out to be not the one, maybe the very last not the one, but she was always honest, always. I mean, she only spoke of a complete lack of feelings, but at the same time, she didn't let go, never let go of me till the end. The whole thing was complicated. I was already divorced, Mara wasn't yet. The only thing linking her to her husband was a child, a son, a boy of about 10, I saw. Mara hadn't slept with her husband in a long time, preferred to do that with people she did not have tender affection for, and of course with those who didn't love her in return. Such masochism. So there was no way I could end up in Mara's bed. Despite it all, we spent one night together. Conduct played no small part. That's all. You know, this doesn't change anything. Mara, in the morning, pulling up her skirt. The 6th letter to Robot Werther. And these freaks, Werther, listen, these freaks think that freedom of information poses a threat. A regional survey, 58% are pro-censorship, 26% strongly agree, 24% of the respondents were anti, 8% were strongly against, 18% found the question too difficult to answer. Of course they found it too difficult to answer. They can't do anything at all, just gawk into the box, void themselves, producing little bastards, or copies of themselves, a second shift, meat from meat. It seems to me, Werther, it's about time to blow this planet to kingdom come. They tell me if they've killed in past lives, it means they'll watch a thriller in this one, indicating evolution. What's more, if they were illiterate in those lives but read tabloids now, they're already evolving. If you spit from that steeple, then dames with detectives and old scandalmongers by the door and thieving concierges and airheaded salesgirls and putrid butchers and workers in vivariums specialists and lawmakers specialists and copulators with goats, horsemen and drinkers of themselves to death, horsemen are evolving. Anamnesis morbi, a hatchet into the heart, a rusty hatchet, nothing elitist, a functional thingamajig. Werther, it's not that I'll never love them. Werther, if only I had a gun, I'd start with these vivarium specialists. The 7th letter to Robot Werther. I was afraid of one, do you know, devilishly afraid, of hearing my beloved in a different key. Oh, not that one, not that key. That would be the lid for me, Werther, the lid of the piano. A major and B minor, a monstrous mix. You're old-fashioned, my beloved says. Let her say what she wants. Let her just speak. I like the sounds of her voice. They're like birds released from a cage. She is a bird, Werther, but you never understand. I can never touch her wings. There is pollen upon them like a butterfly. How it should have gone, these lines look at themselves in the body of the letter. Fly off, hurry away, a cord for falling out of love, to the glacial bald mountains, to the iron copper mountains, be their mistress. You just modulated to the wrong key. Goodbye. Shoot right into the hearts of Mara and Kay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Natalia. Our 4th pair of readers will be translator Chamini Kulathunga and author Thilini Liyanaarachchi. Chamini is a Sri Lankan translator. She's a graduate of the Iowa Translation Workshop and a 2019 Summer Visiting Fellow at Cornell University's South Asia program. Chamini was the former blog editor at Exchanges. Her work has appeared in World Literature Today, the Los Angeles Review of Books, the Los Angeles Review, and elsewhere. Thilini Liyanaarachchi is a Sri Lankan poet. Her debut poetry collection, titled Unrequited Love in English, was published in March 2020. Her Facebook page, Unwritten Poem, was one of the first literary pages in Sri Lanka to reach 100,000 followers. Liyanaarachchi's poetry explores topics such as human connections, cultural restrictions, and class disparity. Welcome, Chamini and Thilini.
Hi everyone. Thilini and I are thrilled to be a part of this event today, reading alongside these amazing translators and their authors. We are especially thankful to PEN America and the organizers of this event for giving visibility to a minority South Asian literature like ours. The poems we're going to read today are from Thilini's debut poetry collection titled Aprakashita Premia, The Unrequited Love, which will be launched a week from today in Sri Lanka. I picked these 4 poems hoping that they would be a representative sample of Thilini's work in terms of the themes that she usually explores. The first poem is addressed to the first female ruler in ancient Sri Lanka, Queen Anula. The history book suggests that she was a promiscuous woman who poisoned several of her husbands, but rarely anything about her as a ruler. So in the poem, Thilini questions the historical accuracy of these facts. And the other 3 poems explore human connections from the point of view of a daughter and a lover. The last poem of the selection, Inebriated Love, describes a woman's feelings for her beloved using unconventional metaphors found in Sinhalese women's writing, specifically from substance intoxication, a culturally restricted domain for South Asian women. And some of these poems are forthcoming in Project Plume at the end of this month. So yeah, Thilini, would you like to get us started?
Right, hello. Thank you everyone for this chance. And here we go. Rajinak Pema Papayak. Antapurahimi Rajun Hatavanda Itihasapot Perala Perala Unma Hayen Hinaoa Obasaragi Liyaki Kiela. Benda Pirimin Tavasagane Dunne Vasamada නැද්ද කියලා එකම සැරයක් ඇත්ත කියලා යන්න එනවද රැජින අනුලා උන්ට තහනම් නොවුනේ සෙල්ලම පිරිමි නැකතක උපන් හින්දාද නම් නොදන්නා ගැහැණු මල්කෙමි සියක් දහසක් එමක් බැන්දාද පින් තියෙන්නේ සෙල්ලමට වගේ අපිම රතියට රත් කරන්නද එහෙව් උන් උඹ ගැන කියන්නේ ඉතිහාසයේ පව් මකන්නද මේක එහෙමට රටක් රැජිනක් වීම මහලොකු පාපයක් වුණ ගෑණියෙක් ඉහළට ගියොත් ඈ කාගේ හරි ලිංගයකි එක් වුණ කාට නැතුවත් හිතෙනවා මට අහන්නට උඹේ කතා ඔක්කොම උඹත් උඹේ හිත මිසක දන්නේ කවුද මේවයේ ඇත්ත නැත්තම. Thank you.
To be a queen is a sin. Venerating the kings with concubines, turning the pages of history books, they laughed at you, saying, "She's an erotic being." Could you come back once more, dear Queen Anula, to tell us if you really poisoned every man you married? Was it their masculine auspices that allowed them to be at play? Was in love with them? They say being a man is a merit. Was it why copulation only their right? Was it why they pointed at you? Was it to erase their sins from history? In a country like this, being a queen itself is a sin. And once a woman climbs the ladder, she's but a genital that unites with another. I wish I could listen to all your stories, for it's you who knows the truth of them all.
කාලයට අපි නවතින්න කියමුද? අම්මා දැන් කතා කරන්නේ හෙමින්. හුස්ම ගන්නේ නැවතිල්ලේය. දොස් නගන්නේ නැති තරම්ය. උයන්නේ එකම කෑම දෙක තුනය. කන්නේ බත් කට දෙකකි. බොහෝ වේලාවට කල්පනා කරමින්ය. අම්මේ අපි මෙහෙම මෙතනම නැවතීමුද? කාලයට නවතින්නේ කියා අපි ළඟ අපි අපිව බදාගෙන ඉමුද? Thank you.
Shall we ask time to stop? Mother speaks slowly now, breathes tranquilly, hardly ever nags, cooks the same curries, only eats a handful, often lost in thought. Mom, shall we stop here at this very moment, and ask time to stop with us, so we can remain nestled in each other?
සමාන අසමාන කතන්දර. අම්මේ අද වහිනවා කොළඹට. වහිනකොට මේ වගේ ඉඳ හිට. යාළුවෝ පනිනවා මිදුලට. ආසයිලු උන් මෙහෙම වැස්සට. දෙමෙන එක හරි ෆන්ලු ඇත්තට. කළු අලාවන් සෙයිලමෙන් දුර. දකුණු අහසේ එනෙන හැම විට. මට බයයි වහිනවද ඕසෙට. කියා මං නැති ගමේ පොළවට. මගේ හිත වගේ මැටි බිත්තිවල අප්පච්චි වගේ හයිය ඇති තව. වැහි බින්දු තව දරා ගන්නට කියා සනසා ගනිමි හිත තව. පුංචි කාලේ මහා වැස්සට එමෙන ගෙබිමේ අයිනේ අස්සක නුඹේ චීත්තේ යටට ගොලි වුණ මම තවම නෑ ආස වැස්සට. Thank you.
Even uneven stories. Mother, it's raining in Colombo today. During these occasional rains, my friends here jump outside. They say they love it. They say it's fun to get wet in rains like these. But every time I see a dark cloud hovering in the distant southern skies, I'm scared. The heavy rains might torment the earth of the village I won't be. The mud clay walls are like my heart. Now they're only as strong as Father. I send them a silent prayer, asking to hold on a little longer, to stay strong against the raindrops. As a child who huddled inside a rag during heavy rains like this, in a corner of our wet floor, I still can't seem to like the rain.
මත්වීමේ ප්‍රේමය. උඹ අන්තිමම ඩන්හිල් උගුර. පළවෙනිම බීර එන බුබුල. සූස්තියක මැද හරියේ සුවඳ. පරද්දපු මත්වීමේ නිවන. Thank you.
And this is the last poem, Inebriated Love. You are the last puff of a Dunhill smoke, the first foaming beer bubble, the nirvana of inebriation, conquering the smell of a half-burnt spliff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chamini and Thilini. Our final pair of readers will be translator Ralph Hubbell and author Nazli Karabiyikoğlu. Ralph Hubbell holds an MFA in creative writing from the Johns Hopkins University. His fiction, essays, and translations have appeared in The Sun magazine, Words Without Borders, Asymptote, Tin Houses Lost and Found, and elsewhere. He lives in Baltimore, Maryland, and is currently working on a translation of the short stories of Oğuz Atay. Nazli Karabiyikoğlu is an author from Turkey, now full-time resident in Georgia, the country, who secluded herself from the political and gender oppression in Turkey. She was awarded with the Writer at Residence program in Prague by UNESCO City of Literature 2020 and the Writers in Exile Scholarship by Penn Germany for 2021 to 2022. Welcome, Ralph and Nazli.
All right, thank you. Thank you to PEN America and thank you to all our writers and translators for producing great work, and thank you to the attendees as well. So just to give a little bit of context real quick to this work, it's sort of an excerpt from an excerpt, and it's from a novel that Nazli is currently working on, which is meant to be a politically grounded LGBTQ plus work that is sort of trying to move away from portraying gay relationships in the way they've sort of been romanticized in a lot of Turkish literature in the past. The excerpt we're going to read from, it's the third part to this this sort of situation where there's a young woman named Elfiye, and she's gay. She hasn't come out to her to really anyone, and her parents sort of suspect though that she is gay, and so they take her to a Muslim exorcist. So in a nod, I guess, to Mike Pence, it's sort of the Muslim version of Pray Away the Gay. And so how we kind of look at it. And it's quite a harrowing experience for her, as you'll see. And I'll just also say before I hand it over to Nazli that it's not lost on me, sort of the irony of being a straight male translating a queer writer. But I think that's one of the great things about translation is it creates these really interesting pairings. So we're gonna run with it. So I'll hand it over to Nazli to read the Turkish. You got to unmute yourself though.
Hi everybody. It's nice to see you here today. So as Ralph told you before, I will read an excerpt from my novel Elfiye. So I will read the third part in Turkish and hope you enjoy it. Çok geçmedi. İçimdeki sapık duyguları sorgulaması için Cinci Hoca'ya götürüldüm. Yere koyduğu minderin üzerime oturmamı söyledi. Oturdum. Bağdaş kurdum. Arkama geçti. Dizlerin üzerine çömeldi. İki omzumu da iki eliyle tuttu. Abdest aldırdın mı diye sordu. Berideki sedirde oturan üveyime. Aldırdım. Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Gözlerini kapat ve sakın ne olursa olsun açma dedi hoca. Başımı salladım. La havle ve la kuvvete illa billahil aliyyil azim. Omuzlarımı öyle sıkı tuttu, ensemi üflemeye başladı. Hazreti Süleyman'ın mührüyle, Hızır Aleyhisselam'ın izniyle toplanın. Aynı ritimde arkamdaki kadınla beraber ön arkaya sallanıyorduk. Korkunç biri değildi, hatta çok gençti. Tülbentinden hoş bir koku yükseliyordu. Elleri küçük ve soğuktu. Kazağımın üzerinden etime geçen ürperiş. Toplanın çabuk diye bağırdı. Biraz daha hızlı sallıyordu şimdi beni. Hadi hepiniz acelemiz vardı demek ki. Kızıyordu seslendiklerine. İsmi güldü. Nefesi öyle kuvvetliydi ki derman olmadığı hiçbir dert yoktu. Öyle söylemişlerdi bize. Ye saftiş derken eliyle ensemi kavradı. Bir katlama diş sağ kulağıma tekrar ye saftiş sol kulağıma durduk. Kıpırtısız, eliyle kafamı bastırdı, çenemi göğsüme yapıştırdı iyice. Ya bir sel esti ya da o başıma üfledi. Sessizce durduk. Arkamda başını mı sallıyordu? Ne yapıyordu? Eli ensemde, eli başımda, saçımda eşyaların odadaki bir koru sedirle 36 ekran televizyon havada döndüğünü hissediyordum. Ve aleykümselam diye çığırdı Gül Hoca. Gelmişlerdi demek. Bizi çevirmişlerdi. İçimdeki her şeyi okuyabileceklerdi. Ne kadar nefret ettiğimi üveyimden ve hiç sevmediğimi babamı, sürekli orama dokunduğumu ve aklımın orada durduğunu, sakladığımı kalemlerimi, sonra kaybettim dediğimi, kırıp döktüğüm ne varsa hepsi döndüler, dolaştılar ve etrafımda toplandılar. Çıkarın emrini verdi ardımdaki. Neyi? Çıkarın çabuk. Kollarımı iki yanına açtı, yere paralel durdu. İkisini alın, hepsini içinden. Çıkarın, çıkarın, çıkarın. Ötede üveyimin nefessiz izlediğini hissediyordum. Ne çıkaracağım? Aniden bir eliyle ağzımı açtı. Çenemi iyice aşağı bastırdı. Aç Elfiye dedi. İyice aç ağzını. Gözüm sımsıkı kapalı. Çenemi kafatasımdan koparırca. Açtım ağzımı. Madem çıksın, ne iblisse içimdeki, kopar, kopar, kopal. Al hepsini, sen al gerisini. Sürekli bir emir döngüsü. Ağzım kuruyordu. Kalbim de telaşlanmıştı şimdi. Ne olacak, ruhlarla periler mi geldi? Halbuki hiç Karakoncalos masalı anlatılmadıydı bana. Lut kavminin lanetinden sana sığınırız ya Rabbim. Amin dedi üvey. Cinsini şaşmışlarsa sana sığınırız ya Rabbim. Amin. Gerçekten de sen erkekleri bırakıp şehvetle kadınlara yaklaşıyorsun. Doğrusu sen azgın kavimden kılınmışsın. Tövbe de, tövbe, tövbe de, tövbe. Hazreti Lut'un asası Yunus'un hükmüyle Bismillahirrahmanirrahim deyip elini mideme dek soktu, tuttu ve çıkardı. Sapkın ve azgın olan ne varsa kusturun. Kahvaltıdan kalmış ne varsa çıkardım reçelli ekmek, domatesli omlet. Kustukça coştum ve daha büyük öğürdüm. Sırtıma sert tekmeyle vurdu. Kökünü kazıyın diye emretti cinlerine ve bana. Kus dedi. Kus, kus. Safraya dek. Tövbe et, tövbe de. Alın tutun bunu. Neyi varsa alın. Kazıyın kökünden imanı, kirleten pislikleri. Döktüm, bıraktım. Elinin tadı ağzıma yapıştı. Daha fazla öğürdüm ve ağladım. Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Gözlerimi açtım. Kalbim duracaktı. Ayakları ters dönmüş, kafası küçük, gövdesi ışıktan cinler, melaikeler, periler ve leşiler görmeyi beklerken tek gerçek dizlerimin dibine çıkardıklarımdı. Yemek borumdan mideme inen yanıktı. Tamam dedi üveyime dönüp Gül Hoca. Cinsi sapık girmiş zavallıya. Bundan böyle adetine dek her gece 21 besmele çeksin. Adet olunca 666 kere çekecek. Gusülden sonra da namazını kılsın. Kaç banknottu sayamadım elden ele geçen. Tülbentini düzeltirken içeriden küçük bir kız geldi. Pisliğimi temizlemeye elinde kovayla. Aman ha diye tembihledi hoca arkamızdan. Bir daha musallat olursa bu illet yakma seansı yapmamız gerekecek. Sakın geç kalma. Elfiye rutubet kokulu apartmandan çıkarken çocukluğunu kustuğu zeminde bıraktı. Çünkü Elfiye cin geçirmez sapasağlam bir kızdı. Thank you. So Ralph, it's on you.
All right. Okay, there we go. Not long after this, my stepmother took me to a hoja who performed exorcisms to interrogate the perverted sensibilities inside me. The hoja told me to sit on a cushion on the floor, and I crossed my legs. She slipped behind me, crouched to her knees, and held my shoulders with her two hands. You made sure she washed herself? She asked my stepmother, who sat on the divan behind her. I did. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Relax, close your eyes, and whatever happens, don't open them, the hoja said. I nodded. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. She held my shoulders so tight and blew on my neck. Gather now, by the seal of the Prophet Suleiman, by the will of his peace be upon him. Come, Kneeling behind me, she rocked us together to the same rhythm, back and forth. She wasn't so awful, actually. She was even young, a pleasant scent rising from her muslin headscarf, her hand small and cool, a chill passing through my sweater to my flesh. Gather yourselves, quick, she shouted, and she began to rock me faster. Let's go, all of you, every one of you. We must have been in a hurry because she sounded angry, this woman named Gul, about whom we were told there was no sickness or forceful breath couldn't cure. Yea, soft, dish, she said, and clutched the nape of my neck, then into my right ear, bikat lamadish, and again into my left ear, yea, soft dish. Then we stood motionless until she pressed down on the back of my head and jammed my chin straight into my chest. I don't know if a breeze swept through or if she'd begun to blow on my head, but we stood there silently. What she was doing behind me, I couldn't tell, nodding, I guess, one hand on my neck, the other on my head, and it felt like the bare divan and the old RCA TV and everything else in the room was whirling around through my hair. Then Gul Hoxha shouted, "Wa alaikum salam." Her jinns must have arrived, had encircled us, and they would soon pour over all the things I kept inside me. How much I hated my stepmother and how little I loved my father, how often I touched myself and what I thought about when I did, that I hid my pens but claimed I'd lost them, what I dropped, what I'd broken, all of it returned to me, revolved around the room and gathered itself at my knees. "Get it out," she commanded them from behind me. "But what?" "Get it out, now." And she spread my arms to the side and held them parallel to the floor. "Take it out of her, all of it. Get it out, get it out, get it out." I could feel my stepmother watching breathlessly nearby. What was I supposed to get out? Suddenly a hand opened my mouth and pulled down on my chin, hard. "Open up, Elfiye," she said. "Open your mouth." I clenched my eyes tighter and opened my mouth so wide I thought my jaw would detach itself from my skull, seeing that a demon lived inside me and it had to come out. "Tear it up, tear it up, tear it up. You, and you, keep what's left." This constant gyre of orders, my mouth was going dry and my heart was rattling. So then, the spirits and the fairies had finally shown up. Ah, and I still hadn't been told the ancient legend of the Karabiyikoglu. "In you, O God, we seek refuge from the scourge of Lot's people." "Amen," my stepmother said. "In you, O God, we seek refuge from sexual confusion." "Amen." "Do you dare commit abominations such as no creature ever did before you? Say that you repent." "I repent." "You really have given up on men, and now you're lustfully inching closer to women. It's true. You're the descendant of a lecherous people. By the rod of the prophet Lot and the seal of the prophet Jonah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim." And she plunged her hand all the way into my stomach, grabbed whatever perverse and lecherous thing lurked down there, and pulled it out. "Make yourself vomit." I forced up what was left of my breakfast, the bread and jam, tomato omelet. The more I vomited, the more I let myself go, heaving harder. She kicked me in the back. "Tear it up by the roots," she ordered me and her jinns. "Throw it up," she said, "up, up, up, until there's nothing but bile. Repent, say that you repent. Take hold of the filth that soiled her faith and tear it up by the roots." I let it pour out of me, the taste of her hand still on my lips. I heaved and gagged and started to cry. Then, in a single breath, she told me 3 times to pick it up and pulled me back and pressed my head to her chest. "Gather it up, don't leave it behind, take it and go." And whatever it was that had come out of Elfiye, the jinns would carry away. I opened my eyes. My heart had nearly stopped. I was expecting to see angels, fairies, and leshies, or jinns with backward twisted feet, tiny heads, and torsos made of light. But the only tangible thing was what I'd brought up from my stomach and the burning feeling running down my throat. "Barakallahu minkum wa alaikum, Godspeed," Gul Hoxha said, and she blew her jinn friends back to where they'd come from. "That should do it," she turned to my stepmother. "The poor thing was possessed by a perverted jinn. She needs to say 20 basmalas every night until her period. And when she's menstruating, she does it 666 times. And she prays after a full ablution." I tried to count the banknotes that passed between them, but I couldn't. As Gul Hoxha fixed her headscarf, a young girl came from the back room with a bucket, apparently to clean up my mess. "But keep an eye on her," Gul Hoxha stood behind me, cautioning my mother. "If the issue gets worrisome again, we'll have to do a seance with fire, so bring her back right away." Elfiye walked out of the damp, foul-smelling building and left her childhood with her vomit on the floor, because she was an iron-hard girl no jinn could ever possess. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph and Nazla. What a treat to hear these stunning voices in Hungarian and Russian and Sinhalese and Turkish and Italian. So a huge thank you to all of our readers. It looks like we have a few minutes for some questions. If you've got questions, now is the time to type them into the chat box. And I'll start you off with translators. Can you describe your process of translation with your authors? Just jump in and unmute yourself.
I'll start. I have been corresponding with Mariangela for many months now, and sending her my translation, and then we'll discuss, or if I have a particular question about a word and what precisely she was thinking of when she used the word, I'll ask those questions, and then she will respond, and she always says that her English isn't good enough, and she leaves it up to me, which is the sign of a wonderful collaborator, but she'll also share with me any, she sometimes says she has a piccoli dubbi, little doubts about particularly how common a word is, and she'll maybe want a word that's slightly less common, so that the tone will be a little more surprising. And it's been an incredibly gratifying process, and we only met yesterday over Zoom, so I'm grateful to all of you for bringing us together, since I was unable to go to Italy and meet her myself in person.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds, I'm sorry, Rachel, you go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Ralph. You started talking already.
Well, I was just going to say that sounds really similar to mine in analysis process. She once said to me, I was asking her all these questions, and she said, well, hey, it's your art, you know, and that was like a really, really freeing thing to hear. But just as Olivia said, I'm also, you know, getting in touch with her about, you know, tone and, you know, how common a word is. And we usually just on WhatsApp, just fire questions back and forth with one another. And, you know, that seems to suffice. Yeah. Rachel?
Yeah, it's my Natalia's process is pretty similar, where she'll send me some texts and I'm able to kind of select what I am interested in doing, like this go round. I'll do a couple of drafts by myself until I'm able to like tease out what are the really naughty questions, because Natalia's prose is, she's, as we mentioned in the bio, Natalia is a trained pianist, so her prose is very musical, but she also strikes really purposeful dissonance, and that's something that I sometimes struggle with in translation. So in speaking with her, she's been good about letting me know, like really listen to the tone, listen to the tempo, and just she really trusts me with it, which has been really lovely. And when things get difficult, we send each other memes of our cats. That's pretty great.
Well, in my case, working with Thilini is very easy. She's very helpful with my queries to her. She would respond within a matter of minutes. That is, like, of course, if she's not asleep in Sri Lankan time. I corresponded back with Thilini, especially when I was translating the first poem that I read, To Be a Queen is a Sin. Initially, like the poem is very much situated within the Sri Lankan history, which I'm not good at for the most part. So I initially mistook the character for a character in the Ramana story, and then I sent her a Facebook message, and then she called me back and like she explained me everything that was like that went into the poem. So it was a very helpful collaborative process. And something I love about almost all the authors that I'm currently working with is that they have faith in me and my craft as a translator as much as I have faith in them and their work. So it's easy and enjoyable to work when both parties have faith in themselves. And for the most part, everything else becomes a matter of effective communication, I think.
I would like to compare the process of translating Zita's poems and the process where my own poems are translated into other languages. The process is so very different because the nature of our poems is very different. So when my own poems are translated, first, quite often I have to explain the multi-layered nature of the poems, because it happened quite often that only the first layer of the poems was translated, and then I had to explain, okay, that's the kind of story layer, but there are other hints, and also the music of the poem has to be there, and the language play. Now then, when I translate Zita's poems, the sentences are seemingly easy. The language seems to be quite understandable for the first read. So first, I don't have questions because I understand everything, but it is only seemingly easy. It's very easy for a first draft, but then to give back the kind of sacred nature of the poem is very tricky. When I do that, so when I have the kind of sophisticated version, I send it to Zita with my explanation what I had to change, what is different in the original and in the English version, because these two languages are very, very different. And then sometimes for certain things, I have more versions when it's kind of all the same, which version could be there. And I ask Zita which one she prefers. But of course, then I decide for the final version. Thanks.
So it looks like we've got 2 more minutes, and we have 2 quick questions that I saw in the question chat box. For Nazla, when will your novel be out and published? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi. Thank you for the question. I think the novel will be ready to publish like on December. And I have to ask this question to my agent, Mina. So we're working together, and I left all the rights of the novel to Mina. So I'm not really sure about it, but I suppose that it will be published next year or the year after. Thank you.
And our last question is for Agnes and Zita. What are the exact titles in English of the 2 poems? They were very powerful and moving.
The first one is called Like Mouse Brothers. It was published in the literary magazine One Hand Clapping. And the second one is called New Hope. It was published in the Offi Press.
Thank you. So it looks like we are out of time. Once again, thank you so much to the PEN Translation Committee, to my co-organizers Anna Dinwoody and Sandra Smith, to Allison Markin Powell, to our hosts PEN America and the PEN Translation Committee, and to the readers, and most importantly, thank you to the members of the audience for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.